What's up, everybody? Hope you got a good night's sleep because the both of us are lacking it right now. This is Morning Cup of Hockey alongside Kobe Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. We are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. We're going to talk about the Rangers double overtime win last night, the Colorado Avalanche comeback. We'll preview game one of the Oilers and Canucks tonight and talk about game two of the Bruins and the Panthers. We'll also have the legendary Pierre McGuire joining us at 9:15 to get his perspective on the NHL playoffs and everything he's been up to. But before we do anything more, I got to do one thing. Kobe. Was that in your mentions all night last night with Alexis Lafreniere? Scored 2 goals or what?
Not really. No.
It was quiet.
I think people realize that, when you score your first goal in 28 playoff games, you really can't gloat. You
told
really
me that,
can't.
and I didn't even realize it.
It was his first goal in 28 playoff games. So there isn't a lot to gloat about with that play. But, you were expecting me, even when we talked before the show, to say that it was a soft goal by Anderson. And I actually didn't agree with you. Sure, is it one you'd like your goaltender to save from that angle? But I would say it was a little bit more of a goal scorer's goal than a soft, goal. I mean, the way he collects the puck, he doesn't really hang on to it. He sees the fact that, there's a lane. There's a great screen happening in front of Anderson. I mean, he clearly doesn't see it, but, that was the only place that goal could have gone in. So I would say it's a goal scorer's goal. And ESPN did a nice job in the intermission. I think it was actually showing a freeze frame right about here when he gets the puck. And yeah, they showed an awesome view on ESPN of this. And you could just see Anderson cannot find this whatsoever. And then Loft takes that one extra step to create that lane. So, good on him for, in my opinion, really his first highly impactful game of the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think, I know you've talked about how he had 5 assists coming in, and I'm the first one to say, if you want to be 100-point type of scorer or a point of game player, even in the NHL, nights when you're quiet, you've got to figure in on goals. And that's what he's done in the playoffs. He's had secondary assists, empty net assists, but
he's also had so many takeaways. He's had so many takeaways that have led to goals. Like, that's something I feel like that goes unnoticed. He had a big takeaway again last night. I'm kind of blanking on which goal it led to. It might have been his own. When Panarin drops the puck to Fox and finds him backdoor. But he's really just done so many little things that we talk about guys being quiet when they're not producing, or even if they are producing. And I think that's just one thing that goes unnoticed is Lafreniere's effort on the back check and his ability to take the puck away.
But let me just explain something to you, Johnny. Yeah. When you play in the NHL, your job is to back check, okay? Yes. Unless you're a 130-point scorer,
or on the Leafs,
say anything to you. But at the end of the day, like, again, you're praising a guy for doing what he's supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to back check. You're supposed to defend. Until you've reached the status of certain players, you can't get away with those things when you're 23 years old and you haven't, proven that you're a superstar. And then the really good superstars, before we bring Pierre in, and I know he will agree with this as somebody who has watched this game at ice level for, as long as either of us can remember, the highest end superstars, they not only are as forceful offensively, but the best ones are as good defensively. So, I don't mean to rain on your Lafreniere parade. He had a big night. I texted you before you texted me. Again, it's good to see him. If the Rangers can continue to get scoring from him on top of all the other guys, it's just, Trocheck's going to score. Zibanejad's going to score. Panarin has 3 assists. You get that other guy who can chip in a game like that. That's the difference between losing in a conference final and or winning a conference final type of series. So, we'll keep the conversation going about the Rangers as we bring Pierre into the show. But we're excited to welcome him in for the first time he's been in. And Pierre, I haven't seen you in forever. I know we keep in touch via text, but it's great to see you.
Nice to visit with you, Colby. Hello, Johnny.
What's up, Pierre? Where are you in a cabin up north?
I'm way up north in Quebec right now, watching all the games. I'm heading back to Boston on Thursday and start skating with my summer group on Saturday. So look excited about that.
Any big names you want to throw out in the summer group?
No, because everybody kind of goes there. It's kind of like being in a dojo. It's intense. It's early in the morning, and you'd be surprised at some of the names that are there, though.
I'm sure it's unbelievable. But also just sticking in the theme of the Rangers Hurricanes right now, I think if you'd ask most people, the Hurricanes were the better team last night and probably deserved a better fate. But we're seeing it time and time again in these playoffs how important special teams are. And, it's something that I feel like during the regular season, people talk about. If you're lacking 5-on-5 and only rely on your power play, it's not going to get you anywhere. But that's not what's happening in these playoffs. So have you noticed anything just significantly about how important it is to have a good power play right now? Because it seems to be working out for every team that is clicking.
Well, it's critically important because if you don't score and you have a power play, you lose momentum. Mm-hmm. But if you have a power play and you generate opportunities, you got the other team on their heels rather than their toes. That's a good thing too. There's a lot of different things in playoff hockey. Having a good power play helps. Having an elite penalty kill helps. Having guys like Jacob Trouba that can pile drive players against the boards in the home rink, that makes a difference.
Or himself.
The biggest thing to me, and this is huge, and it's always been the telltale sign in all playoff hockey, a great save is as important as a great goal. Because a great save in a home building can energize the fans as much as a great goal in a home building. And for the Rangers, they're getting elite goaltending from Igor Shesterkin. And I coached a lot of games in that building. I coached playoff games in that building against real good Ranger teams back in the early 90s. And when those fans are chanting someone's name, it makes a difference. You're in the building, Johnny. You know what I'm talking about. Colby, you've been in so many buildings. You know what I'm talking about. It makes a difference. So everybody's equating, special teams here, goal there. Big hits, great saves, they matter too in the playoffs a lot.
Yeah, and then we've seen physicality like we did not see obviously during the regular season. I mean, almost all these series, tight or not, have been physical, and I think that's when the energy, like you're saying, it builds, and then players, they see that, they feel that. Players who wouldn't normally finish a hit or go out of their way, then they're like, I want to get in on that. I want that feeling. I want to hear that. So it's certainly, and I even texted Johnny at one point last night and I said, is it quiet at MSG? It
was.
You didn't feel the energy coming out of MSG. And then all of a sudden, it was a big hit. And they get to the power play, and then you could start to feel the building coming alive a little bit.
Think about those two shorthanded saves that Shesterkin had to make late in the game. And I'll tell you right now, the crowd got into it then. They got into it. The Trouba near miss on Marty Necas, I'll just say this right now. If he connects there, he's probably missing the rest of the playoffs. Because that's a knockout shot. Hey, look at Jake. I know fans on the other team dislike Jacob Trouba. There's not a GM in the league that wouldn't take Jacob Trouba.
Yep.
Not one team in the league that wouldn't take him. Ask Rod Brindamore if you wouldn't mind having Jacob Trouba on his team right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're showing the hit right now, Pierre. And you can see, I mean, it was definitely a hit where he was looking for it. And as Necas got out of the way, the elbows start coming out. And what's interesting is, I was looking at the ice time after the game, and I actually thought Jacob Trouba had a little bit of a rough night. He was a little uncharacteristic, trying to do more. Normally, one thing I appreciate so much about Trouba is he knows who he is. And he plays to his identity, in my opinion, as well as, in the top echelon of players who know how to play to their identity. I think Trouba is one of those guys. Last night, I felt like maybe he was, he dove in on that puck kind of, late in the game, and they give up that odd man rush, doing things uncharacteristic of himself. But I like the fact that Lavi just kept rolling him out there. You look at the ice time for the D. It was all very even. There was no 38 minutes for one guy, 12 minutes for another guy. And Pierre, you've coached at this level. You've been management at this level. You've been ice level. You've had all these different viewpoints. And something that Johnny and I talked about a little bit before the show started was the certain guys have such little ice time in that game last night on both sides. Rempe plays 4 minutes. Nason only plays like 5 or 6 minutes. How important is it, though, to be able to balance ice time, especially in these games that start, barreling into overtime.
Boy, what a great point. Spoken as a guy, Johnny, that actually scored a game-winning goal in overtime in a national championship game. But here's
I'll have that on my
Colby's a really good point. So just throw it at you. I remember watching a game once between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, I think, or Pittsburgh and Washington. And I don't think Alex Stoyanov ever got a shift for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the entire game. Now, we're going way back, but I don't think he got a shift. I don't think it registered as a game played. That's tough if you're a player sitting on the bench like that, because you're basically seizing up. You warm up in the warm-up, you get going, and then all of a sudden you're pile-driven right in there. The thing that stood out to me in that game, management of the Rangers' defensive ice time, I thought, to Colby's point, Johnny, was excellent. But I'm looking at Trocheck's minutes. There's not a lot of times in a game, and I had the privilege. You don't coach a player like Mario Lemieux, you maintain him. You don't coach a player like Ronnie Francis, you maintain him. But I worked with those guys when we were winning cups. And I don't think there was ever a game where either one of those guys played more minutes than any of our defense. And last night, if you look at the ice time, Trocheck's at 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So the coaching staff, whether it's Phil Housey, whether it's Michael Pecker, whether it's Dan Muse, whether it's Peter Laviolette, it doesn't matter. The coaching staff in New York recognize this guy's got it going on right now. He's got a lot of gas left in the tank. And so I think that's a big part of what Colby's saying, Johnny. You got to – asset management matters so much at this time of the year, and I think the Rangers have figured that part of it out. I really do. Peter deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, what Peter Laviolette has done and brought to this team, you can sense it, and it feels contagious. And, I think when he was first hired, everyone had all these questions about, he's gotten to Stanley Cup finals but hasn't been able to get it done since 2006. And, is this really the right voice for the room right now? And it's so obvious that what he has done, he makes everything sort of like a family as well. I mean, early on in the year, Laviolette actually invited the players, friends, and family to come to a practice and be there and see the day in, day out. It's unlike anything I've ever really seen. Obviously, I haven't really been around the NHL as long as a lot of other people, but it's something that feels a little refreshing for more of an old school guy, which I don't know if he's always been like that, but it feels like Laviolette. You talk about coaches who come into a team and they force players to kind of adapt to them. But it feels like Laviolette has also adapted to the players. And I don't know if that's really a thing with old school coaches. You can maybe speak of that a little bit more, but we're in like a new era, right? With players and how they need to be treated.
I think the very best coaches understand every decade you have to change. And if you don't, you're not going to be relevant. Scotty Bowman coached in 5 decades, and I was his roommate in one of those decades. And I can tell you right now, he changed with every decade. That's one thing that allowed him to coach in the 60s during the Vietnam War era, and then coach in 2000 when we had, iPhones and iPads, so like he saw the broad spectrum. But one of the things that allowed him to keep doing that, Johnny, to your point, is that he knew to change with the times. I think Peter Laviolette's exhibit A of that. What I like about what Peter's done, he surrounded himself with really smart hockey people.
Yeah.
Phil Housey,
some young guys.
Phil Housey, a really good coach,
yeah.
Colby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Michael Peca, of all the guys, and I don't know how much you guys have talked about this, when you break down all the stats every day, the most improved team in the NHL in faceoffs by a mile. It's not even close. New York Rangers. It's not even close. If you look at what Michael Peck has done with this team with faceoffs, it begs the question, what were the Buffalo Sabres doing letting him leave Rochester to go to New York? He should have been in Buffalo. He's a Buffalo guy. He's a Buffalo Sabre. He should have been. They all make the big deal about Lindy Ruff going back there. Michael Peca should be back there. Yeah. That being said, he really has helped. He's really helped the New York Rangers a lot. Dan Muse, a really good tactician. And I think Laviolette just gets how to manage people. Like we were talking about with Johnny Colby. And the other thing is he's learned over time. He's had mentors. A lot of coaches these days are getting thrown right into the fire. Who's been their mentor? What coaching tree do they come from? Chances are not too many of them have real good coaching trees. He has a coaching tree.
Well, and
with
you can just see the edge. You can see the edge when you're talking about tactician and Dan Muse and all the different talent skill sets that the Rangers coaching staff has. And look, we all love Rod Brind'Amour. We're not taking anything away from the job he does. But right now, the Rangers power play, the plan they came in with, and the video that they were shown, and you could just see the way they're breaking down Carolina's box or diamond, depending on if they're rotating in or out. Like, you don't see Carolina get seamed on multiple plays in a shift, let alone goal after goal in a series. And I think a lot of that has to do with preparation, video. Obviously, Pierre and Johnny, even you to an extent, playing for Carvey at UMass, who is such a preparer type of guy. But, when you can make your power play players aware, you're not going to handcuff them and tell them what to do, because that doesn't work with those skill elite. No. But if you just give them awareness and a visual of what they're going to see, just say, hey, here's options. You're seeing the New York Rangers go to school right now with their power play.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty interesting you would say that, because Kreider's one of the best slot area players we've ever seen in history in the NHL. I'm talking about, Franzen in Detroit, Holmstrom in Detroit, Hornquist in Pittsburgh, Ryan Smith in Edmonton in the New York Islanders. You start Timmy Kerr, who I had the privilege of coaching in Hartford when he left Philadelphia. We're talking about the best slot area players in the history. Kreider's got to be up there. Has to be. So that's one asset that's huge. Then you look at Zibanejad, a right-hand shot on the left-hand side of the ice. His one-timing skills are phenomenal. Then you look at the other side. You got whomever you want over there. It doesn't matter. You got potpourri of players. But on the back end, you got one piece of ammunition that's critical, Adam Fox. How many times have you seen Adam Fox get a puck and get his shot blocked? There are not a lot of guys that can do what he does. So his ability to distribute the puck, shoot the puck, it forces Carolina to spread out the diamond that Colby was talking about. And if you move the puck the way the Rangers do, and they move it so well, you're going to break down any penalty killing team. So the most important play for any team, win the initial draw. Don't let them get set up early. Mm-hmm. And the Rangers, because what we talked about before, the improved faceoff play, they win a lot of initial draws.
Well, one thing I wanted to add about the faceoffs too, Pierre, and I'm sure I know Colby is good friends with him, but I'm sure you have a good relationship with him as well. A lot of people forget that Nick Bonino was here for 3-4 months on the Rangers, and he actually taught a lot of the centers to flip their blade over the opposite way. So if you're a righty, you would take a draw on the left side with your curve like backwards, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a forehand draw. You turn over your bottom hand, and you make it a strong side faceoff. And you see guys like Gaudreau doing that, Zibanejad doing that. Trocheck's done it from time to time. I haven't seen Wenberg do it as much, but wasn't with Wenberg, so it makes sense. But that's just like a little detail that I feel like gets lost in translation as well.
So well said. I completely agree with you on that, Johnny. It's interesting. I remember first time I saw Nick Bonino play was playing in Avon Old Farm for Johnny Gardner. Like, that's a long way back. But Nick, those Pittsburgh teams that won in 16 and 17, he was a really underrated part of those teams.
Yeah, totally.
And I know Colby's all excited because he's a BU guy. I get.
Love the guy.
So it was a BU celebration last night because Celebrini's kind of leaving. So, but he's going to another Terrier guy in Greer. So you're all excited. I get it. It's okay.
I literally texted Greersy and I said, hey, congratulations. Take care of our boy, but do me a favor. Drag Will Smith out of Chestnut Hill while you're at it. All right. We need to offset the loss a little bit. And obviously Guersey had a good laugh, but excited for him. Obviously his dad and his family lives up in that area because he's the, head of sports science or vice president of sports science for the Golden State Warriors. He's got the relationship with Steve Kerr and all the players. Those guys like finish their game and they'd be running into the training room to watch BU play because they all know Macklin so well. How much did you get a chance to see him play this year, Pierre? Because I know you're on the college hockey circuit right now, and we're going to get to Ryan in a minute. I know he's now going to be playing in Boston, so we'll get to see him a little bit more this year, which I'll be excited to do. But how much did you see Macklin play this year? What do you think of him?
I probably watched 25 to 30 games that he played in. Watched him practice, talked to Jay Pandolfo a fair bit. I talked about it at the beginning of the year. I do a show called The Eye Test with my partner in Boston, Jimmy Murphy. And we had Jay on early, probably in October. And I just said, this guy's like Jonathan Toews with more offense. Mm. And I've known Johnny Toews, since he was a kid growing up in Winnipeg before he went to Shattuck. So, you kind of get feel for players. And the thing that separates Macklin from a lot of players is his ability to shoot the puck. Like his one-time shot on a power play is unbelievable for a kid that's 17. You know, I have this stat, and Johnny, you'll appreciate, Colby, you'll really appreciate it. Brady Tkachuk had 8 goals his freshman year at BU. He had 8 goals. The next year, he had 22 in the NHL. Macklin Celebrini almost had 40 goals at BU. Just try to compartmentalize that intel for a second.
Yeah.
This guy's so good.
Yeah.
He is definitely, I know everybody, what's a generational player? I'll take all the context out. He's a star player that saves a franchise. That's what he is. So whatever you want to call that, call it whatever you will. In 2005, when they did the Crosby, the Crosby draft, but it wasn't the draft, it was the lottery. I was there with James Duthie, Gord Miller, and Bob McKenzie in New York. It was held at a hotel, believe it or not in a TV studio. And when the Pittsburgh Penguins won that, it totally changed the dynamic of their franchise forever. It did. It totally changed their franchise. And, they went from being a mom and pop shop, even though we had won Stanley Cups and they had Mario Lemieux and all these great players. You get Crosby and it changes everything. He builds you a new rink. It brings in new fans. It creates different youth programs. And I think Macklin Celebrini is going to do that for San Jose. I really do. I really do.
And we've seen that fan base. It's a great sports town. The Sharks, when they were getting to a cup final and competing, like that building looked insane. And you look at the Golden State Warriors, who I know Macklin's father works for, they've had incredible crowds through their championship runs. Like, the Shark Tank is a place that needs talent, right? So it'll be cool to see them, have that with Macklin. I want to just ask one more thing about the Hurricanes and Rangers and then move on.
Yeah.
Carolina is now 4-13 on the road since the 2022 playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something to that, right? That can't just be coincidence.
No.
You've coached in the Stanley Cup playoffs. What is it about coaching on the road versus coaching at home? Because this team, it seems to be night and day, whether they're at home at PNC Arena or on the road. And
I think it speaks a lot to their fan base in Carolina. That's a hard building to play in. And I think people that have been down there know it. I'll never forget the 2006 Stanley Cup final between Edmonton and Carolina. Peter Laviolette was coaching Carolina. Brind'Amour was his captain. But the noise level in Carolina was the equal to what was going on in Old Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton. And trust me, I did an interview before the game in Edmonton. So I'm going to say it was probably game 3 with Christopher Pronger, one of my old players. And we were standing at center ice. Prongs on skates is probably 6'8". I'm standing on shoes. I'm 5'10". and we were talking before Doc Emmerich threw down on me. And he says, Pierre, you're going to have to scream because I can't hear you. So that was really loud noise in Northlands. But you go down to Carolina, whether it was game 5 or game 7, it was so loud. It was unbelievable. It blew Northlands away. So I think home ice for that team kind of matters a lot. But I think the biggest thing is for whatever reason, they don't seem as comfortable playing on the road as they are when they're playing at home. They look just way more comfortable playing at home for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and like I was looking for this, especially like a little bit more last night. It doesn't look like Brind'Amour gets too. Obviously, you have certain things you'd like to see from a matchup standpoint when it comes to having the last change. But he's never struck me as being fanatical about that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've not noticed him, he plays his 3 lines right now and he seems to just roll them out. And it doesn't necessarily look like it's one guy and probably the top 4 as well. But I mean, am I missing something with that? Or is it just okay?
I think you're spot on, Colby. The one thing I would say when it's money time or winning time, depending on what you want to call it, Jordan Staal and Martin get a lot of more time. And one of the things I've noticed over time, he's not afraid to use Jack Drury in those situations as well. So he does have players that I think he's particularly fond of when it comes to defending a lead. But how many times have they had the lead in this series, especially late in game? Like, this has been a tight – people can say whatever they want. Here's my one theory on it, and I learned this a long time ago. You're never in trouble till you lose on home ice in a playoff series. So Carolina hadn't lost yet on home ice, and I do think home ice is going to matter in this series. Wouldn't shock me if it goes back to New York 2-2. Wouldn't shock me if the Rangers went down and split down there and it goes back to New York for game 5 3-1. None of this would surprise me. But the one thing Rangers have right now, boys, and you guys know because you watch it as much as anybody, this Igor Shesterkin something
Yeah,
else.
the difference maker.
And whenever there's a hiccup, you got a guy bailing you out. That makes a big difference.
Look, I mean, that's been the difference in the first 2 games because there's been a lot of even 5-on-5 hockey. Yeah, the power play has been good, but we're talking about 2 1-goal games. And Johnny and I were talking about the Lafreniere first goal, and Johnny wasn't sure because I feel like I grade goaltenders a lot more. I'm much more strict in my grading in the playoffs. I just expect more. I'll say, that wasn't a soft goal, but he's got to have it. And so Johnny was asking me about that first goal. And I said, look, I thought it was actually more of a goal scorer's goal than a soft goal. But at some point, Freddie Anderson's got to stop one that he shouldn't stop. And that's been the difference in game 1 and game 2 is Igor's come up in the big moment. And Anderson, even though he was good late and he was good in overtime and he made a lot of big saves, there's that one different. Like at the end of the day, it's what it boils down to: 1 goal in both games.
So I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's such a smart way to look at it. Listen to some of the names I'm going to tell you: Patty Roy, okay, Marty Brodeur, Tommy Barrasso, Mike Richter. You go Dominic Hasek, Eddie Belfour. All the things Colby just talked about, Johnny. That was a characteristic of all those Stanley Cup winning goalies. They all made a save that everybody said, how did he do that? Look at Bobrovsky in the last round. One of the turning points of this series with Tampa, and I know it was a 5-game series, but one of the turning points
was game 2. That was game 2.
That's save. Yep.
The save. I mean,
100%.
So to Colby's point, that matters.
Yeah,
that stuff matters, and Freddie's got to give him 1 or 2 coming up. He's got to give him 1 or 2 of those. He does.
But also on the flip side of that, I know we said we were going to move on past this, but so many different points keep coming up. On the flip side of that, we've talked about Carolina, in years past not having those game breakers, right? And Carolina, Pierre, I'm not sure how close you pay attention to the analytics and whatnot, but they're the analytical darlings. And you talk about
they built their team on analytics. So go ahead.
About expected goals, and Carolina probably has the most expected goals out of anyone in the playoffs. I haven't looked at it recently. I think Colorado was up there. Carolina might have been 3rd actually yesterday. But here's the thing: they're not putting it in. Aho gets chances. Svechnikov gets chances. The pucks aren't going in. And on the flip side, you got Panarin, Zibanejad, and Trocheck, and they're finishing. They're putting the puck in. They might not get as many chances, but they're opportunistic. So at what point do you look at your big guns in Carolina and say, you have to just put the puck in the net somehow?
You have to. You got to score. I mean, if they're not scoring, you're not winning. I'll give you an example. Vancouver just played Nashville in a 6-game series. Vancouver knew if Nyquist, Forsberg, and Ryan O'Reilly aren't scoring, there's no chance for Nashville to win.
Yeah, we're okay.
0 chance.
No matter who's in net, we're okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And when those guys didn't score, Nashville didn't win.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're those big guns that Johnny's talking about. They matter a ton. They matter so much. And all the analytic stuff is great. I guess it's a reference point for a lot of different people. But I know one thing: you can't analytic heart, character, desire, and finishing ability. There's no equation for it.
I'm one of the people, Pierre, that will say, look, I understand there's good information out there. But I think it's one small slice of a very large pie, and the people that only use it are people that don't really know what they're watching. So they lean on the analytics because they don't actually know what's happening. Because look, hockey is very chaotic. Okay. It looks fast. It looks out of control. But if you really know what you're looking at, it's like a Picasso. These goals that happen, they're $1 billion paintings by artists that guys know exactly what they're doing, exactly who's around them, exactly what their spacing is. And analytics can't account for that type of thing. And it just can't.
Hampus Lindholm to David Pastrnak is the Picasso that Colby's talking about, Johnny. That is, and here's one thing I tell you about that. I know everybody's going after Mitchell Marner. It's a terrible line change by Bertuzzi, okay? He hung his partner out to dry. Marner got hung out to dry in a 1-3-1 where he's got to lock that lane. And Colby knows as a defenseman, you need that forward there to trust him, and he's going to be there. And there's no way, I don't care how fast you are, he couldn't match Pasternak's speed. Not a chance. But if that play had happened 3 minutes later in that overtime, the puck never comes out there because it was fresh ice. It was the start of overtime. So nobody had skated in that corner yet.
Good point.
So the puck comes off the boards and it doesn't come out jittery. It comes out flat. So it makes a big difference. But if there's ruts in the ice and it's a polluted ice surface, as you guys know, because you played, it's a tough play to make. Yeah. But Hampus, Lindholm, and Pastrnak, that's the Picasso that Colby's talking about.
I mean, Pasta's pointing with his stick. I mean, the whole thing just lined up. There was so many little details. But all right, so look, we've kept you here for a while. We've talked a lot of NHL. Before we let you go, I do want to talk about one other thing with you. You've given your life to this game at the pro level in so many different ways. And I know you've been around college hockey before, but now you're really around college hockey. Your son's a Division I player. He had a really nice run at Colgate. He transferred to Northeastern, which I love that. That staff at Northeastern, Jerry Keefe is one of the good guys in this sport.
We'll be calling his games next year, Colby, on NESN.
Exactly. Like, last year I had one Northeastern game for ESPN, and then, hopefully they'll find their way back into the tournament. But how much have you enjoyed just getting to be dad and going to watch your son now play at, the Division I level against, incredible talent and in a fun environment every weekend?
It's a gift. It really is. It's been a gift for the last 3 years. He's a kid that's like you guys, committed to the game. He left home at 13 to go to Belmont Hill in Boston. He hasn't really lived at home since he's been 13. He's 21 now. He had his heart broken in 2020 during the draft. He was 105th on Central's list, but there weren't a lot of kids being drafted because of COVID from, the prep school situation. So he went to Penticton, played in an amazing program with the Penticton Vs. Fred Harbinson is just a maestro. It's not a program for everybody, but it was for my guy, and he loved it there. He told his mother and I once, best year of my life playing in Penticton. And he had 3 amazing years at Colgate, and really grateful to Donnie Vaughn and Brett Riley for recruiting him there and winning a championship there for Coach Vaughn in his last year. And he loved it there, but he also wanted more of a challenge, more intensity. And you guys both played in Hockey East. It's not a knock on the ECAC at all. It's just a different brand of hockey. It's just different. And I think one of the big things for Ryan was the opportunity to play in the Beanpot and to play for Coach Keefe and his staff.
Yeah. Well, that's look, I have a heavy bias. I think the ECAC, usually you see Harvard and Quinnipiac at the top of that list. I know Harvard had a little bit of a down year. I'm sure they'll be back. I'm a big fan of Ted Donato and Marcoux and Tortorella and those guys, what they're doing. Don Vaughn is an absolute legend of college hockey. Like there aren't many guys that have just done it and been around as long as he has. And then obviously Cornell, Mike Schaefer. But you move into Hockey East, now you're playing against, Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, and you're doing it on a more regular basis. Ryan Leonard. I mean, the list goes on. And that you're right. That's a whole nother challenge.
Yeah, and that's why Ryan did it. He was approached by a bunch of NHL teams as well, and his father would not let him sign a deal. I said, "You're getting your degree, then you can do whatever you want." So we're excited for Ryan. It's a great opportunity, and I think the last 3 years for us as a family has been amazing. College hockey is an awesome thing. It's a gift. Whenever you get a chance to watch your children play. My daughter just graduated from Dartmouth. She was a rower there, and she's now working over in Europe, and it's just amazing to see what athletics can do to help change a kid's life. It really.
Well, and I saw you doing I watched some of the ECAC playoff Final Four that you were on the call for up in Lake Placid. So it's a great event up there. I did it one year, years and years ago, Pierre, and it's really cool that they do it up there.
I think Doug Christensen, by the way, the commissioner of the ECAC, has done a magnificent job. He just finished his first year as a commissioner, and that league's going to grow exponentially. The women's hockey brand in the ECAC is off the charts. It's so good, and the coaches are phenomenal. They're not a little bit good on the women's side; they're really good. The men's side is still very competitive, But Lake Placid is a tremendous venue. They just extended for 2 more years. ECAC, wow. They're going there for 2 more years. But, you know, I got to tell you, Colby, Johnny's over there sitting there, a UMass Amherst guy, and his coach was one of my best recruits, Greg Carville.
I brought one of his worst.
You know, it just shows you how much I think of Coach Carville. Joe Marsh and I brought him to St. Lawrence, had the privilege of coaching him. Then Scotty Bowman and I and our staff in Pittsburgh drafted him in the supplemental draft with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Then I had him speak at my wedding. That's what
wow.
That's what I think of Coach Carville.
I've gotten to know him really well through broadcasting, and I actually, you know, Carvey keeps a tight circle of people. I think, you know, he's quiet, and you know, I'm sure you know him a lot different than we know him, Pierre. But I feel pretty lucky that there's a very solid, trusting relationship that I've gained with him, having never played for him, just as a broadcaster. When I go there, I'm in the coach's room, and, you know, we're spending time together and we're going through stuff, and he's very forthcoming with information, you know, which wasn't always the case. So I really respect what he's done there at UMass. I think that it's great for when you have big brand name schools like a UMass and that have football and basketball, when they're good at hockey, I think that elevates hockey. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really good for college hockey.
That is really perfectly said. And I couldn't be more happy for Coach Carville. You know, one of the things the fans at UMass need to know, and I know I spoke to Johnny about this a couple of years ago, or last year maybe, Coach Carville's had a lot of opportunities to leave. Mm-hmm. And he's been extremely loyal to the program, and the program's been really loyal to him. But I would say that at some point he will get a National Hockey League chance, and he will do really well with it. He will do really, really well with it.
Coach Carv and I's relationship has gotten much better since I'm not turning pucks over in the D zone anymore.
Right, it's like Bruce Cassidy and I. Now we're buddies now. We were not when I was with him for 4 years, but we're cool now. So,
but Pierre, speaking of coaching, you know, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't ask. There's 4 coaching jobs available right now: the Devils, Kraken, Sharks, and Jets. Can we start any rumors? Are you throwing your name in the hat?
No, I'd love to go help somebody. I think I could help a staff, but no, there are a lot of, like, I'll give you an example. There's some really good coaches out there that aren't even being mentioned for some of these jobs. And, you know, I can just look at the college guys and, you know, Ben Barr at some point at UMass is going to get an opportunity. He's going to get an opportunity. He will. Coach Carville, we just talked about him at UMass. Jay Pandolfo is going to get an opportunity. I know people at BU don't want to hear that. Greg Brown has already been an assistant coach in the NHL, just like Pandolfo was with the Bruins. Brown was with the Rangers. There's so many guys, and I haven't even touched on the guy. What about David Carl? I got to think, if David Carl wants to leave Denver, and I don't want people at Denver mad at me, this is just the reality, he's going to get a chance.
Today he could leave, in my opinion.
That's what I'm saying. So he's going to get a chance. So there are a lot of guys. And there are a lot of major junior guys that are good too. So, you know, the big thing to me, I think the revolving door of coaches, where you're an old coach and all of a sudden you're just going to keep getting jobs, I think that ship has kind of sailed. I know Travis Green, congratulations to my buddy Travis, just got the Ottawa job. I think that's a connection situation. He and Steos are real good friends, and the people at Newport Sports Management are real good friends, represented both of them. So I think there was a conduit there. But, you know, Berube's going to get a job. I don't know where Craig's going, but he's getting a job somewhere. But then there are other jobs that are going to be open. Yeah. There are. And that's where I think the young guys are going to go.
Yeah. I hope that happens. I think there's definitely a lot of talent. I think there's talent in you know, I'm pushing for my guy Steve Greeley to get an opportunity to run a team. I know you know Greels.
Oh, really well. All you BU guys stick together. I get it. I know.
Except for Greersy when he fires Quinney with a year left on his contract.
Hey, Drury did it too. Don't worry.
I know 2 BU guys have fired.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. No, look at everybody when they sign. I talked to David, by the way, David Quinn, and he's such a good guy, and he's such a smart hockey person. You know, everybody that signs up for a job in the NHL, they know the best day is probably the first day because that's when everybody's happy. And then after that, it gets harder. And you know you're never going to be there forever. Everybody knows that. You know, that's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pierre, we want to thank you so much for taking the time this morning. And, we hope you have safe travels. I know you're leaving Quebec, but it's been so fun talking to you about the playoffs and coaching and all your stories. I know you're full of them. So maybe we can do this again later on in the postseason and, hope you enjoy all the summer skates and everything you got going on.
I would love to come back on with you guys. Congratulations on starting your podcast. That's fantastic. Support that 100%. I know the passion both of you have to make the game better, and that's really important. I think this is the biggest thing going forward for all. I learned this from the late Herb Brooks after the 02 Olympics. It's a really good thing. He had just coached the United States. Obviously, they lose to Canada. It's an amazingly emotional game. And Herb was sitting at the airport with us. I'll never forget this. It was Bob McKenzie, Gordon Miller, and I. And he said, you guys have and he was really demonstrative and very emotional. He said, you guys have a responsibility to help grow the game. You have no idea how many kids watch. All these different messages you put on TV, they better be the appropriate ones. And he was so animated. And it was something that stuck with Bob, stuck with Gordon, stuck with me forever. That was 22 years ago. And Herb made a big impact. And I just pass that on as somebody that respects both of you. You have an opportunity to grow the game. Keep doing it because it's been really good. Keep it up.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, and we'll see you around Hockey East next year. Looking forward to that. Always good to see a friendly face in the rinks, and good luck. And tell Ryan we send our best.
I will do that. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, Colby. Johnny, thanks for having me. Take care, you guys. Keep loving the playoffs.
Thanks, Pierre.
All right,
that was awesome.
Yeah, no, look, it's funny. I got to know Pierre well at the Olympics was when I really got to know him. Like he was always friendly in passing before, but I got to spend some time with him at the Olympics and, always super, I always got a lot of encouragement from him, especially during the NCAA tournament when I was first starting. I wasn't very good. I was getting opportunities between the benches, which he was just very enthusiastic and supportive. And look, how that stuff can be early on when you're broadcasting. You don't have a lot of confidence. Twitter is dragging you up and down. Your mentions are, you get to a point where you don't care anymore because you're confident in what you do. But it was cool to meet and spend some time with him during the Olympics. I wonder at the next Olympics with NBC having it, always having the rights. I wonder if we'll see him back on for the next Olympics because obviously the relationships and what he was a part of for so long there. So good job getting him to come on. I think that's a pretty big name that I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about a little bit because he's just not on TV. He was working for the Ottawa Senators as basically the assistant GM for a couple of years or a senior advisor, whatever role you want to call it. So now, it's good to kind of get his face back in front of the camera. What's funny? What do you laugh
at? You know this too from texting Pierre. One of my favorite things about him is that he signs off every text, right? He'll text you
well, he's old
Pierre
school.
McGuire.
He's old school, he's old school. And I think that's kind of a proper, old school thing. And that's he's kind of a mixture of that old school, sort of values and charm, and then understanding the new school. So good job getting him on. I've seen I know there were a lot of questions, a lot of comments in the chat. Look, I see one thing pretty consistently in the chat right now before we talk a little Dallas, Colorado, and people are being heavily critical of ESPN. I think fans are frustrated and look, obviously what happened last night when they cut away, a technical difficulty, clearly they cut away.
How bad was it?
In the last minute of the game, Carolina was literally coming up the ice and they went to the Dallas Stars game and you could tell it was a mistake because it flickered and it was a whole thing. And look, I work for ESPN. Obviously I didn't like seeing that. That was difficult. That's a technical difficulty on the back end. The thing I just want people to understand here is that, there's certain things broadcasters like a play-by-play guy and a color guy can control, but most things they don't control. If you don't hear volume well, or you're getting too much ice effects or whatever, you can be angry at a network, but don't get angry at the guy, calling the game. Sean McDonough is not controlling the volume that his headset is transmitting through the truck out over the airwaves. So totally fair to be upset with ESPN. I think TNT has just, done a better job. Like, let's just call it what it is. They've done a better job, and you don't see a lot of the complaints coming there. But at the end of the day, there are things that people are upset about and they get mad about that are out of the broadcaster's control. They just are. We don't control those things. There's a team of people behind you controlling those things, right? So
it was 30 seconds in the last minute. Is that what it was?
However, maybe about 30 seconds. Yeah, maybe
yeah.
about 30 seconds. So, and you have a lot of people, I see it in the chat, they're criticizing Sean McDonough. I mean, look, you got to understand, like, Sean McDonough is one of in the broadcasting industry, whether he's your cup of tea or not, like, he's one of the most well-respected play-by-play guys in the entire industry across so many of the sports, not just the major sports. The non-major sports, whether it's golf, whether it's, other sports, he's highly respected and he's paid a lot of money, to do that job. So I'm just letting you guys know, you get to have your own opinion on any and all broadcasters. I certainly have mine on certain people that I'm not, a big fan of, but again, I'll be completely transparent with everybody. I work for ESPN, so I'm going to be somewhat reserved in what I have to say about it.
Also, just for anyone who does care, TNT does have games 3, 4, and 6 in Raleigh for that series. So if you don't like ESPN, at least you have TNT to look forward to for the next 2 games. But again, like, these are just these are hiccups that you deal with and you move on. It sucks, and I didn't see it live, so I can't really speak to it personally.
But I do understand people's frustration.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to say that I don't understand your frustrations. But also remember, we've all now watched Eddie, Doc, and Kenny, and Pierre, for that matter, for a really long time. And I know we're a couple years now into the new TV deal, but again, you've got to remember, like, what we're all used to. You're used to your home call, and then you're used to basically whatever Eddie Olczyk is on and Kenny Albert, because those have been some of the biggest voices in hockey when we didn't have multiple networks with a lot of different people working.
A good point, though, from Shane Bullen here, too, in the chat. He said, Sean McDonough is fine. I think a lot of the frustration from fans comes from not being able to watch their regular play-by-play guys in the playoffs. There also are, and I know Kenny does radio, a lot of people I know, a lot of my friends who love listening to Sam Rosen, Joe Micheletti, Dave Maloney, Kenny Albert, Don LaGreca. They'll have their TV volume down, but they'll have the radio volume up on whatever app they use to get their radio.
Do you see Shane? Yeah, exactly. You fall in love with what you know. And Sam, I know Kenny did radio last night, but like, when Kenny goes to do national TV, Sam then does radio for MSG Radio or New York ESPN. I forget the network it's on. But listen, I understand it. You guys get used to certain crews and you love your home flavor. Totally understand that. I don't necessarily have the same attachment because I don't have a team, right? I like to watch all different teams. I have certain broadcast crews. Like I love watching Louis DeBrusque and Jack Michaels in Edmonton. Anytime I watch an Edmonton game, I always use their feed because I just happen to really like that one. They're just certain. When I watch,
I think Louis was calling the game for Sportsnet last night. I think.
Yeah, he does national work. When I was
talking to him a little bit yesterday.
When I do a Rangers game, I like Sam. I know his fastball is not as fast, but I've worked with him. I like him. There's something about him, and I like it. It just it just depends. I think Dallas has a really good home show. But again, even in the chat right now, you see, like, I think Alex in the chat said that he didn't like Biz. He liked Mess and Levy over Biz. And personally, I think that the TNT show panel is great. I think it's so entertaining. I think Biz, again, and I don't know Biz all that well personally, but I think those guys do a great job. I think it's entertaining. I think it's cool how they rotate that extra person, whether it's Gretzky, whether it's Lundqvist, whether it's Berube. I think Colby Armstrong does an awesome job when he gets in there. But I actually do believe that if you're turned off by Biz's antics, but you actually listen to him when he starts breaking something down or talking about it, He knows what he's talking about. And you
Mhm.
can criticize his career, but it doesn't really matter. The reality is he's in training camps. He was on rosters. He was a healthy scratch. He was in practices. He learned the league. He learned the game. He knows the people. So it's all completely subjective to what your personal preference is with broadcasters. It just is, you know. So we hear you. I saw the comments in the chat while Pierre was in there. I'm not going. I wasn't gonna start bringing that stuff up with Pierre. I didn't think that would be the right thing to do. Plus, Pierre's not going to criticize anybody. It's not who he is. I'm sure he wishes he was doing games still. It's just not the way he's going to roll. So, Stars Avs, Johnny. Unless you have anything else, we should hit on Stars Avs quick.
Well, for me, Stars Avs was tough. I only saw overtime because I was at the Ranger game, you know, so I didn't see any of regulation. I can't really touch on it. All I can say was Dallas blows a 3-0 lead on home ice. Not a good sign. The West runs through Colorado yet again. But you watched that game. What did you make of it? Because I can't really speak to it.
Yeah, so I didn't see the first because I was watching the Ranger game.
But Dallas did dominate the first parts of overtime.
They came out with a jump, you know, coming off the Game 7 win. The crowd was wild. You know, they get a couple of goals on sort of seeing eye shots. The goal from the point. Suter scores, does a nice job actually with poise, and then Johnson gets one off the face-off, and then they get a 5-on-3 goal in that game. And then honestly, come out in the second period, and it was a whole different ball game. Colorado found their legs. Colorado started putting pressure on them. They get the first goal. Who scored the first Colorado goal? Oh, Nichushkin, I believe. Was it Nichushkin?
Makar had the second. I think McKinnon had the third.
Yeah, I forget the first goal. I think it might have been Nichushkin. But at the end of the day, you know, they get that first goal and just everything changes. Dallas got back on their heels.
Right.
Dallas started, you know, you start seeing leaky gaps. You know, Dallas almost got tight on home ice, and Colorado, like, they just chipped away. They didn't go into full riverboat gambling hockey, but they slowly chipped away. They scored their first goal, I think, at the 14-minute mark of the second period. So it wasn't like the first minute or two. And then all of a sudden, that train starts rolling and guys start getting going. McKinnon starts waking up a little bit. You know, Nichushkin seems to be the guy who stirs the pot a little bit. And they find a way to get that game to overtime. And you know, on that game-winning goal, to me, it looked like Miro Heiskanen was tired. He gets beat by Miles Wood. Miles Wood played.
Wood's a horse, though. He's a horse.
Wood only played about 10 and a half minutes going into overtime. So his legs were not heavy, at least from playing. Maybe heavy from not playing.
Yeah, it's almost even harder to
take your pick.
As someone who sat a lot on the bench, it's not as easy.
And Heiskanen, who is an absolute horse, gets beat. As you can see, the highlight from ESPN here, you know, on this game winner in overtime, you know, Heiskanen, who rarely gets outskated, you know, just gets beat. He loses body position. He's probably tired. And you look, Nils Lundqvist played 4.5 or 5 minutes. So Dallas played 5 defensemen for the entire game. And you wonder if that caught up with Heiskanen in overtime. And was he exhausted? He gets caught out on a little bit of an extended shift, and then he gets beat by Miles Wood. The question I'm gonna ask you, Johnny, what does this mean for Dallas? Like, I'm not asking you if game 2 is a must win.
Well, I was gonna say it's the same exact scenario as,
you know, we're not going there. You learned your lesson. You learn your lesson the first time around, but you know, you blow a 3-0 lead. You get average goaltending from Jake Ottinger. It just was. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you've got this Colorado team, man, and it just doesn't look like anything can stop them.
Well, again, I'm not speaking about this game specifically because I didn't watch, but I watched a lot of the Colorado Avalanche throughout the entire regular season. And let me tell you, there were multiple games where I won a lot of money live betting the Avs when they were down by 2 or 3 goals, because this team is never out of a game with the offensive firepower that they have. I mean, Cale Makar's goal in that game, just from watching the highlight, the way that he moves around the blue line, gets to the top of the circles, his shot is so lethal. You know, he beats Ottinger pretty clean there from a point shot. And they have all these weapons in McKinnon, in Makar, Rantanen. And these are guys that you're not going to shut down. You just got to try to slow them down, right? Like Kobe, I've talked to a lot of NHL players, and Michael Del Zotto is one of them. And he goes, I know that when I'm going up against McDavid or McKinnon, I'm not going to stop them. Like they're going to come through in ways that they always do. My job is to just make it a little bit harder on them. Like these guys are that good that it's impossible to literally close them down. And Dallas has to find a way to do that if they're going to win this series. But Colorado, like I said, I've said it all year. Their weapons up front, their strength in the blue line outweighs any concern that you have with Georgiev and net. And listen, from watching overtime, Georgiev made a lot of big saves that kept that game tied. He might not be the best goalie in the NHL, but he makes the right saves.
Let's 3 in the first, and then he locks it down in the second and the third in overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it. I mean, would you like him to come up with the first or second one? Yeah, you would. The third one's a 5-on-3. There's a mess of bodies in front of the net, but he shut the door. I mean, he shut the door, and nobody was able to beat him. I thought it was interesting. Tyler Seguin and Pavelski were on the fourth line last night with Sam Steele. Tyler Seguin had an unbelievable chance to score in overtime. Pavelski made an awesome pass coming around the net through a seam, and Seguin was almost, he was almost skating away from the net, but he still was ready for it and gets his shot on through. Did you just spill your coffee?
It almost went right off the table.
Jeez.
Saved by me.
So look, I think that series is going to be really good. I really do. Look, I thought the early part of the Ranger game wasn't great, and then it got really good as that game moved along. I really thought it got really good, and turned into a really exciting game that kind of had you on the edge of your seat. But I think Stars Avs, like it's going to be a dogfight, and I don't know, man. It's hard when Colorado's up in a series. It's you see how impactful Cale Makar can be on a night where maybe McKinnon's a little sleepy early, and obviously found his game, but it's going to be hard to beat Colorado right now.
Yeah, it's man, that's fun to watch. Hoping I can catch the next few games. It's going to suck if they're all on the same night. I won't be able to watch a lot of that series, but
wait, I see some discourse from your Rangers fans here in the chat. People are upset with me. It's unbelievable. Even what I said the other day that you posted on social media about Trocheck. Well, just about how I said I'm never willing to give Lafreniere credit, but like I do give the guy credit. It's just you guys are I do, right, Johnny?
We're a sensitive bunch.
You're sensitive, and you want me to call guys Wayne Gretzky. Like I'm just, you've got to do it for a long period of time to be Wayne Gretzky. It's no different than that Vinny Trocheck video where I literally sat there and said he's been their best player. He does X, Y, and Z. And then you said to me, well, is he Braden Point? And I said, well, look, Point scores 50 goals and he's got 2 Stanley Cups. And he's got
I didn't say
hardware.
I said, could he be?
And I said, yeah, maybe, but he's got to do it for a longer period of time. Like
the wording is different.
If they win a Stanley Cup this year and he's the Conn Smythe and he leads the team, well, then he's on his way.
He didn't win a Conn Smythe.
To what?
He should have, but he didn't.
But he's on his way, is what I'm saying. But you can't have 1 year with 70 points, 77 or 75 points. And like, I'm just like, okay, yes, you're the king. It's like, no, you're on your way. You're on your way.
That's how you know that you're not from New York, Cole, because you could have 1 year with 77 points and they're building a fucking statue outside MSG.
But it's just not. I mean, listen, again, I played with the guy. You all saw Ryan Whitney's tweet last night. I said
that was word for word what you said.
I said the same thing on our show for the last couple of weeks.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, no, but look, I went and looked it up. Like he played there that year as well. So he obviously saw it didn't take a rocket science to watch that guy in practice one day and realize he shouldn't be there. Yeah. He just had to learn how to be a little heavier, a little harder. He played a little light and he did learn it. So people are very, very sensitive. Take compliments. Okay. But I'm not someone who's ready to build a statue for you just quite yet. Like you gotta do it for a long period of time. And then, I have no problem. I'll come to the unveiling of the Lafreniere statue when he becomes that level of player. He had his first goal in 28 games last night in the playoffs and you're saying I'm a hater. No, I'm just,
You don't want to call him Wayne Gretzky. I'm calling Alexi Lafreniere the Wayne Gretzky of Quentin Byfields. That's what I'm going to say.
I don't know what you're talking. I don't.
No, I saw it's going to go over your head, but I saw a joke on Twitter like 2 weeks ago that Nick Batum is the LeBron James of Tobias Harris's. It was like basically saying the best player of a player comparison. I thought it was pretty funny, but the creativeness and the humor goes over your head. So let's move on to our Parasso playoff preview and talk about the games tonight. So this is presented by Parasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at parasso-usa.com with our promo code hockey15 in all caps, hockey15. We got game 2 of Boston and Florida tonight. It's Swayman's net. No one's touching that. No one's taking that away from him. And
you mean you're not looking to get him some rest for Ullmark again?
Well, I said in game 1, not tonight. I would have done it the opposite way, but that's why I'm not an NHL coach. And then we got Edmonton and Vancouver kicking their series off tonight. Kobe, I said your name right there, did I? Right? I said Kobe? No. Let's get into Boston, Florida. What do you make of tonight's game? Again, we joke about the must-win game 2. Even if Florida loses this game, I won't be concerned.
Look, I think you don't want to lose 2 games on home ice. Here's my big focus on this game tonight. My big focus is on what Sergei Bobrovsky are we getting? Because we've seen what a good goalie versus a great goalie can look like in the playoffs, and it's seemingly been the difference in games. So if Bob comes out and outplays Swayman or stands on his head, then the Panthers are back in business. But if Bob is good but not great and Swayman only lets up 1 or 2 again, then we're talking about another Bruins win. Look, I also am really interested to see if Sam Bennett plays. He practiced the last 2 days for the first time. I don't necessarily know what that means. Normally you need some contact before you can see what you're really going through and if you really can play. We assume there's probably some sort of break he's dealing with somewhere in his hand, somewhere in his arm. He took that shot right here and he hasn't, been playing since. So I think those are 2 big storylines tonight. I think we've come to expect that Jeremy Swayman's going to have a big night. He's just been incredible. He's locked in. And look, if Pasta continues to play at the top of his game like he did in game 1, it's going to be a lot harder series than I thought. I really did. I thought Florida was going to take care of business in this series easily, but game 1 really proved differently. Florida's going to look for a better start. I mean, what's your sort of feel on this game?
I think Swayman is just on a different level. And if I'm Florida, if I'm anyone playing Boston, that's the only concern that I have is how are we going to score a goal on this guy? I mean, we didn't even mention Igor Shesterkin's 29 consecutive games with 3 goals or less. Shout out to, I think, MYR Marine, who just put that in the chat. But Jeremy Swayman now, I think it's 7 games in a row with 2 goals or less, right, in these playoffs. This guy is lights out, and he is, I don't want to say single-handedly, but he is carrying this Bruins team. And if I'm Florida, I'm going to try to rattle him as much as I can. I would expect Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Reinhart. I know Bennett's not playing. He's a guy that likes to stir it up, but I think Florida, they do a lot of shit after the whistles.
Well, hold on. What do you mean? What? Like, give everybody more detail. How are you rattling him? Like, what are you going to do?
Oh, you're going right to the blue paint. You're going right to the blue paint. You're stopping in front of him. You're snowing him. You're giving him an extra shove when you can. You want to throw Swayman off his game as much as you can. And listen, Swayman, from everything I've seen, he's not a guy that really gets rattled, right? Like, there's clips of him the other night just smiling, laughing, enjoying it all.
He seems pretty laid back, doesn't he?
But what else can you do? Because he doesn't seem fazed by anything. Yeah. So if I'm Matthew Tkachuk, I'm going right to that fucking blue paint and I'm stirring it up first shift tonight. Just to try to.
Yeah, no, I agree. You've got to make him uncomfortable playing his position, and it might mean a penalty. You saw what Carolina tried to do to Igor last night. I mean, maybe that's 2 minutes well worth it in a game like this. And right now, Swayman, I see Recon Gamer chirping at me in the chat. We shouldn't glorify Swayman for making saves because that's his job. Look, it is his job. It is his job to make saves. The
That's
difference
good. That's good. That's
I
good.
mean, it's really not that funny. I mean,
No, that's pretty good.
You're just
That's
happy that he's not coming for you today.
No, because you said we shouldn't give Lafreniere praise for back checking because that's his job. That's the joke he's making. You said the same thing about Lafreniere.
But it wasn't actually a joke.
You
Like,
can't
you're
laugh at
talking
yourself
about-
every now and then.
You're getting excited about a player who back checked. I mean, you do hear yourself.
You're getting excited about a goalie that makes saves.
Lowering the bar. You're gonna tell everybody what Rempe's stat line was last night? Is that the next thing?
What was it? 4 minutes, 3 seconds.
Yeah, he had a huge impact. But Swayman is not
Great
only
vibes in the
saving
bench.
all the ones he should, he's making the 3 extra that he shouldn't. And that's the difference right now. That's what Bob did in round 1. Pierre hit on that save. Okay. Bob didn't do that in game 1. And that's the difference in the series right now at 1-0.
Also, I don't know if this is I don't know if this really gets talked about ever, but I remember, whenever we used to want to rattle a goalie, like your first shot of the game, first 3 minutes of the game, you wouldn't even shoot to score. Sometimes you'd try to put one right in their forehead. And I wonder if Florida would do that. I feel like you don't really hear hockey players talk about that much because it's kind of like
I think that's more when there's a goalie change. Like if another
I feel like it's the beginning of a game. You want to throw a guy off, you just literally shoot for their face.
I always was under the impression that when a goalie got pulled during a game, everyone on the bench would say, first shot against the goalie who just came in, who had been sitting on the bench, try to buzz his tower, try to put one by his ear, try to put one off his head or whatever. So
fucked up.
We'll special teams, man. It's been bigger this year than it seems like it has in the past, and so important in the game. The Bruins penalty kill 23 out of 24 in the playoffs so far. Now, granted, they played the Leafs in round 1. Sorry, Vic, but they didn't exactly
Leafs beat themselves.
They didn't exactly have a ton of pressure. I wonder if we'll see the end of Sheldon Keefe today as the week rolls on. So let's go Edmonton, Vancouver here. I know you got to get off here in about 5 or 6 minutes or whatever.
No, I got 15. I got 15 minutes.
Let's talk a little Edmonton, Vancouver, because I feel like this is the late night series that not enough people are going to see per usual to get to see, McJesus and company. But what are you thinking about this series? Do you think Vancouver has a chance?
Well, here's the thing I'll tell you. Vancouver, I believe, won all 4 games in the regular season, similar to Winnipeg over Colorado, Boston over Florida. And, I know Boston won game 1, but those things don't matter. And I think a lot of Canucks fans are leaning on that a little bit. And I'm new to Canucks Twitter. Listen, I have not seen a lot of Canucks fans in the previous years, but they're coming out now, and you're seeing all this Vancouver and Edmonton hatred, which I didn't even know existed. I got to be honest, as an American kid,
they're two Canadian teams.
No,
but they're gonna hate each other.
No. If you've seen the tweets, these fan bases fucking hate each other.
Well, they're trying to ruin each other's businesses and their provinces. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But listen, we talked about this with. Who did we have on the show this week that we were talking about Canada with a little bit? Frank. We had Frank on yesterday.
He's going back to Vancouver.
It's a 7-game series of NFL Sunday, like Eagles or Giants fans. Probably not Giants fans right now, but like think of how insane Eagles fans are. Yeah. Now do that over a 2-week period of a series in Vancouver and Edmonton, and that's where all this juice is coming from.
Mm-hmm. But to me, I don't want to take anything away from Vancouver. And maybe I'm a little too high on Edmonton. I think this one's done in 5. I think Edmonton takes care of business. I don't see, with the way that Vancouver played in round 1, they're not a slow. They can keep up with the pace of Edmonton. I think they can skate, but the firepower that the Oilers have, the special teams. Vancouver's power play was only at a 15.4%. Edmonton is at 45. Like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
That's a big deal. I mean, that McDavid power play with Bouchard and Draisaitl. I mean, it's when Evander Kane's going, that team is a lot different.
Yeah. Do you see this one going longer than 5 games? Like, I really think Edmonton takes care of business.
I mean, look, I didn't see the Bruins series going more than 5 games either. And we came out and we saw the Bruins absolutely put a spanking to the Florida Panthers in game 1. So I think without Thatcher Demko, I think it's going to be difficult. I think Shelovs has done a great job, but it's just different when you have Thatcher Demko versus anybody else, really. There's only 5 Thatcher Demkos in the league. And I think that was a serious, feather in the hat. Oh, there's my thumb, the bubble that we have no idea why that happens, but I thought that was the one area where Vancouver could make up the difference a little bit, because I think if Demko gets in a zone, he's unbeatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, the troubling thing is Elias Pettersson, or Elias, whatever, we're calling him right now. But
I call him Elias.
Listen, these guys change their names every year with how they want it pronounced. Marshy's by far the worst at it. He's done it year after year just to fuck with the broadcast. Marchand.
Yeah.
He's done it so many times.
After like 6 years in the NHL, Connor Sherry said his last name is Sherry, not Sherry.
Yeah. So
like 6 years.
So I thought that could have been a difference in the series. Obviously, you don't have Demko now till at least game 4. Pettersson missed practice. I saw the report. He's feeling under the weather. I mean, look, Pettersson has just inspired zero confidence in me. And I know JT Miller's a gamer. He's going to be, he's going to be, up for it. And he's going to be sandpaper, and he's going to get up and down the ice. I think Quinn Hughes, probably does better in this series, because I don't think Edmonton's as physical. I don't think they're going to punish Quinn Hughes quite as much. I think there'll be more ice for Quinn Hughes to kind of, more room for him to do his thing. But it's going to be a difficult series for Vancouver. If Skinner gives them B+ goaltending or better, I don't think it's a long series either, Johnny. I really don't.
Jeremiah I don't know if he's being sarcastic, but he said, yeah, Canucks are winning the series, because I think
listen, I've seen a couple people in the chat throw. Alex K said Canucks are winning the series in 6. Look, it always makes me nervous when everyone is picking someone, and I think
it's like NFL Sunday.
We're all picking Edmonton to win this series, and we're all picking Edmonton to make light work of it. So, look, I was proud of myself. I stayed up late last night. I caught a second wind. I made it through even overtime in that Colorado game. So hopefully I can continue. I think the Edmonton starts are a little later, though. I don't think we get the 9:30 Eastern start. Yeah, it's 10. That extra half an hour is tough. So hopefully Edmonton is up by a couple of goals. So when I fall asleep during the third period, I won't feel quite as bad getting on the show tomorrow. But I don't know, Johnny, like that's kind of my thoughts on the series, but obviously we don't know until they drop the puck.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch, though. That's for sure. I'm excited to see that rivalry.
Big E says, why is Edmonton so much better? Well, Connor McDavid for starters, and Leon Draisaitl, and their defensive group has played better. Their special teams are better. Their special team, they have the best power play in the playoffs, don't they? Percentage wise,
PK is perfect, 100% too.
So I think, to answer your question, Big E, that's why Edmonton is playing so much better right now. And Vancouver's missing their star goaltender. Like I know Sheloff's played well, but if you think that Sheloff's is going to see the same type of opportunities and the same type of pressure that he saw against Nashville, against Edmonton, I think anybody in our chat knows better than that.
Yeah. No, I think maybe the one thing you can say, the Oilers have better top end talent, I would say, but the Canucks might have the edge in like their bottom 6 depth, third and fourth line. Like Dakota Joshua.
Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland, those guys. Yeah, I mean, I agree. They are deeper up front, but I don't know if they're.
You're not shutting down McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl.
And I've never loved Vancouver's decor. I really haven't. I've not loved it. I don't think that, other than Quinn Hughes, like I just don't think it's a mobile enough group to compete with the speed and the offensive firepower of Edmonton. I just don't.
Like the top 6, I think, is clear Edmonton. Bottom 6, I would debate that Vancouver's is better. Lindholm too.
So look, I think if Edmonton manages the puck, right? I know we all say, well, they got to be better defensively. Well, the way to be better defensively is managing the puck. If they manage the puck well, it's going to be hard for them to beat Edmonton. It just is. If Edmonton manages the puck well, because they're not putting themselves in odd man rush situations, which then lends to their playing better defensively.
Yeah.
So,
and this will be big for Quinn Hughes, right? Norris Trophy. Probably going to win this year, and if he can stop or slow down, Edmonton's top guns, it's going to be great for him and big for him. This is going to be a huge test for Quinn Hughes, Kobe, like you said, because you don't trust their back end. So
well, and let's see. let's see the Heat, how quick the Heat really gets dialed up on Pettersson. Yeah. Like if he doesn't show up tonight and he's a passenger, which he's just been a passenger, it's a problem. You're going to have a real difficult time if he's being a passenger. So
let's get into Betway.
Let's get into our Betway bet of the day. Still running our great promotion from our friends at Betway. You'll get a free $200 reimbursement on your first bet. You're able to, bet as much as you want, but if you go over the 200, you'll just get the 200 back. To create the way to do it, create an account on your phone, use the QR code. It'll juice your account with the right code so they know that you've got that first opportunity. Place your bets. You'll get the reimbursement. Hopefully you don't need the reimbursement. We'd like to see people win. We didn't hit. Did we hit last night? I don't remember if we hit last night.
No, you wanted Canes money line. I said Rangers money line.
There you go. So we should have actually listened to Johnny for once. Normally we do the opposite of what Johnny thinks. Please play responsibly. Offers only available outside of Ontario. Take advantage. We love Betway. They make this all possible. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our show. That's always important. And what we're going with on our Betway bet of the day, we're going to go over 6.5 in this game. I think anytime you've got McDavid and Draisaitl, I think the over is always a good bet. You're talking about a third string goaltender. I know Shelov's played well in the last series, but you have to wonder, when is that carriage going to turn into a pumpkin when midnight strikes? That generally does happen to guys who come into the playoffs. They're all jacked up. They've got their adrenaline. They play really well. They do a lot for a couple of games. And then you sometimes see that drop off or that plateau. So we like the over on that game tonight. Hopefully you ride with us. Hopefully we can make you some money. And that's what we got for our Betway bet of the day.
Chris Scovalis just said, Johnny, how the hell aren't your hands shaking when you took that video? You take Xanax, the overtime winner last night. You were giving me shit for that too, Colby.
Well, I gave you shit because I'm asking you, like, are you watching through your phone? Are you watching the game with your eyes?
I interned for a full season for the Erie Otters, and they had me doing their Instagram stories of the games from up top. I learned how to watch the game and follow with my phone. It's easy.
Yeah, so you're watching the game.
I'm watching the play happen with my phone, following my eyes.
Okay, so you're not watching through your screen. You're actually watching the game.
I'm watching the game, and I have the phone following my vision.
So you're tweeting, your phone following, and you're somehow watching.
The tweeting, there are things that I miss when I tweet.
Let me just get something straight. Am I right?
It's called being good at your job.
Okay, I guess you're a very talented guy. I get it. You do so well on our show when you look away to read a stat line and then you don't hear anything that I say, and then
I just tune you out.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think you can multitask.
There's a difference.
All right, you're flying to Carolina today, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm flying to Carolina this afternoon. I didn't see D. Ely's name in the chat today. But I know he's a Carolina guy, so maybe I'll meet.
I don't think we had our normal Carolina crew in the chat today. I feel like we normally have a couple,
because they knew I'd be rubbing it in their faces
of our Carolina crew in the chat today. It's not just D. Ely, but there's one or two others that are normally in there that are Carolina people. I'm drawing a blank on the names, but we'll see what happens.
But yeah, I'll be in Carolina flying today, so I'll be at Game 3 and 4. What? The ADHD comment?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. You should have saw me in double overtime. I was just sitting there eating my popcorn. I didn't even have my computer really in front of me until the power play. Obviously, I put the popcorn right down. But yeah, great show today. Big thanks to Pierre Maguire again. That was so cool having him on. And, big thanks to Vic, as always, to the chat. Everyone have a great day. Good hockey to watch tonight, and we will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.